Let's see. Does anybody want to talk about the feature freeze or the security CRDs?
Daniel, you should talk. We have a first cut, right? The blockers are done. We were waiting for Envoy.
That's right. Yeah, I just added an entry to the agenda. We were able to today build the beta 0 and published it, and I just undrafted it on GitHub. So yeah, we got rid of the blockers regarding Envoy, and we have a first build.
Thank you, Daniel.
Awesome.
Is there any release blocker you want to bring up where you need TOC help?
Yes, there is one that I'm not sure what the discussion around that has been. It's about contrib images for proxy, as some filters have been removed, if I understand correctly, from the Envoy release. And in order to maintain backwards compatibility, there was a discussion around us releasing two separate images, one contrib that has all the old filters and one that is based on upstream Envoy.
Yeah, so we discussed this in test and release or networking, or one of the two. And our tentative decision was that we need to figure something out here, but we don't have enough time. And so the idea was we'll just revert that change on our fork. It's not really even reverting. We choose which extensions we build. So we'll just make sure that we include the ones we used to include. And, you know, moving forward in 1.13 plus, we'll figure out the proper long-term solution for them. So I think Chen was working on that, and he had partially done it, but then needed to wait for something like the branch to be cut to finish it. And I don't know the latest status on that. But Chen is the person asking that.
Yeah, I know there was a PR that got put into the main branch to change what some of those were, and I know we had to tweak that change to get the Envoy 1.20 in. So I know there's some stuff in, but I don't know how complete that is.
So I think we'll have to follow up with you, Chen, but it looks like it's either almost done or pretty far along.
Sorry, Mandar, I couldn't quite hear you.
Oh, so the work is pretty far along, and we'll have to just follow up with you, Chen, if he's not on the call. So we'll do that and make sure that he updates the status here.
Okay.
All right, yeah, so far that's everything I have on my list.
Shweta, do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what that item means.
Oh, just wanted to understand the K8S support for the Istio 112 release.
Oh, the intended versions?
Yeah, because we start from 3, we go to 4, come to 3. So I bring it up every release to make sure we always align on what we are looking for this particular release.
What were the announced? Maybe I can pull up.
I should have checked with the test and release. Do we know now that the build is available, which K8 versions we are testing it with?
Yes, we test from 1.16 through 1.23.
Okay.
So that's like 8 versions.
So we're keeping 1.16.
We have kept 1.16. Yeah, 1.15 would be hard because that's when they removed everything. But since 1.16, there hasn't been too much. Now, I don't think people should be using 1.16 today, and it's mostly just there because nothing has broken enough that we decided to remove it, and it doesn't cost much to add extra versions. But that is what we run in CI.
Is Kubernetes 1.23 out?
No.
No, not yet. Okay, just okay, December. Yes, there's no need to make a change. So we'll have the same list basically for the next release.
Are we going to have to follow the steps outlined, I want to say maybe 4 to 6 weeks ago, where we were going to pick up the 1.23 as a supported release once it's released? I think we basically said that once a new Kubernetes release would come out, we would run the .0
Release qualification on it.
yeah, release qualification against the new Kubernetes, and then we would claim that we supported it.
I think that is what we wanted to do, seeing as they had long release cycles.
Yeah, that's what we had talked about doing. I just want to confirm that that's still what we want to do.
I believe so. I mean, they're going to release the first week of December, so there's going to be a long lag between the next Istio release and that being supported. Although, given that they're releasing in the beginning of December, not a lot of users are probably going to pick it up. Like most of the clouds probably won't pick it up until early February, I would imagine. But we should still run it.
I mean, it sounds good to me. Daniel's still on the call, so
Yeah, I mean, I
Daniel
think what we would do, because we did in 110, is we said 122 is tested but not supported, right? So as soon as it came out, we did the testing.
we did the testing, but not supported, but we didn't move it as a supported. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if you look on the supported Istio release
Yep.
status page, for 110, 122 is listed as tested but not supported.
Okay. I was thinking we wanted to move it to supported, but I'm fine either way.
It somewhat begs the question, actually. We might need to test both 111 and 112 against 123 and mark them as tested but not supported. It doesn't sound like there are other strong opinions on the call.
Yeah, it works for me definitely.
I guess my question for John, since he's usually the one that makes the changes, is that is there any precedent on whether we would move the 1.23 besides doing the qualification testing to move it back to our normal test pipeline as well?
No, we're already on 1.23, just the alpha or beta or whatever release cycle they're on. So there's no issue at all bumping that up to stable once they go stable.
Okay, so that's even for 1.11?
Yeah, and if I don't know, if we wanted to add 1.24 in the future, it's also no problem. You just have to add a few lines to the test config, and obviously if there's breakages, then go fix those. But it's pretty simple.
Okay.
Uh, Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Shona.
It does. One more question, follow up. I know long time back I was discussing with John and he mentioned essentially 1.25 is going to be incompatible. So is this something we should start discussing soon? Because if 1.23 is out, it's hardly 2 quarters away from the breaking changes. I do not understand the breaking changes yet, but it sounds like it's going to be incompatible like 1.22.
Well, it's 8 months away from the beginning of December.
Right. Go ahead, John.
I would say yes is the short answer. We should, but it's less concerning than the other ones, I think, because all the other ones involved quite a bit of code in the like in natural code. The breaking changes here only impact the install, and so like you're kind of like, it's not like you upgrade Kubernetes and you're instantly broken. It's just you upgrade Kubernetes and then if you try to install Istio again, it wouldn't work right away. So we should definitely fix it, but it's less scary than the other ones, I think.
But doesn't 125 also remove endpoint slices?
We already have code in 1.12, or maybe the PR is open and it will merge soon. That will conditionally read from the new one or the old one. So,
all right,
yeah,
so
right.
that
It does
was
have concerns, but we've addressed them already. So,
yeah, so that was the only concern we had, and we in a prior discussion we decided that we had enough time to eventually cherry pick these changes if necessary.
okay, cool.
Okay, then we are good. Thank you.
So what is the issue with 125 that would break install?
So they are removing the horizontal pod autoscaler, pod disruption budget, and endpoint slice API. Well, sorry, the version of the API that we use. And so we just need to update the version. For endpoint slice, we've already addressed that. For the other two, it would be trivial, but the problem is the operator API, we need to figure out how we're going to handle that. And so we haven't merged the update yet. But that's it. We just need to update the API version that's used.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
John, do you want to expand the notes for that? Sorry,
I can do that.
go grab something from the door. Strategy document. Stand on here.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm here. Yeah, did you guys talk about it all at the last meeting? Or,
No, we were waiting for you.
okay. Did you guys look at the doc?
No, I was busy doing perf-related things last week, so.
Okay. I mean, we can go through the doc if you want to pull it up.
Sure. Let me pull it up. Actually, Sven, do you want to put a link in somewhere, or just put it in the chat?
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
I'm happy to present it.
I put a link.
You beat me to it.
Where did you put it, Lynn?
In the doc, so you can click on the
okay.
link.
Sorry, I don't see it.
It's in the
never
chat.
mind.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
It's on today's agenda. Scroll down a little bit, but also in the chat too.
You want me to present?
Oh, it's okay. I got it.
Oh, you're switching.
Presumably. Hold on. Sorry. That's weird. Sorry, for some reason the sharing is acting funny.
You got it.
Okay.
I mean, really, all I did was add words to the books that were in the. So. But the proposed focus is continue our cleanup and stabilization of APIs, continue improving upgrades and troubleshooting and extensibility and environments. So kind of more of the same. And then there's sort of more detail about each of those, but really that's the summary, I'll say. If my main question is like, what are we missing anything? Is there anything else that we need to put in?
Probably performance.
Yeah, I thought about adding that and didn't, but
I did add something around performance, but not in a great detail. I add something like we want to continue to make it still the best perform service mesh. I think there may be something at the end too, because I think it's an important area we should focus on, especially Linkd is running campaign against us on performance.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
it's
know
certainly
if our
something that we're looking at it, but
I don't know if our goal should be the best performing service mesh because the performance of other products doesn't matter. I can make a service mesh that's way more performant than Istio and does absolutely nothing, but copy bytes. I think it should be that we meet the performance needs of our users so that performance is not limiting adoption.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add a comment.
well, I guess because we're not going to review and/or in this meeting, right, do it live. So I think that the suggestion is for people to go through and add comments. If there are some big ticket items that people feel are missing, we can certainly raise them here now.
So my top priority, what I think is super important is interoperability. I mean, especially since we adopted Kubernetes Gateway and other APIs, so making sure that a subset of Istio can be used across multiple implementation, including proxyless gRPC and other, like John said, you can have a subset of Istio that is extremely fast. That doesn't do everything, but it depends on what user needs, what set of features user needs. I don't necessarily agree that it doesn't matter, the performance doesn't matter, but it should be possible to use Istio with super high performance with a subset. That's my point.
So some of that is covered in the expanding Istio's reach section, which also has performance in it already, by the way, but not data plane performance only. Actually, no, it has data plane too. But so, yeah.
Expanding is basically taking what we have with the employee proxy and using it in more places or whatever. What I'm saying is that the API should be out.
That's not what expanding Istio's reach means.
Okay.
It means making Istio more useful in more places, not necessarily just using it.
If that's the interpretation, I'm happy with it.
Okay. Yeah, proxy list gRPC is listed in there.
Mitch, you had your hand raised?
Oh, I just wanted to ask that we link it into the TOC doc, but I found the link and added it.
Yeah, so this doc, I think it's in the Istio. Everyone should have access to it to comment, so please comment. When do we want to try to ratify this by?
So Shweta had a comment that this was blocking the 113 release. I'm not sure that it actually was blocking the 113.
It's not blocking, but I wanted to start the 1.13 roadmaps, but we wanted a direction for next year because 113 is for Q1. Like what should we prioritize? So there's always some carryover, but we want to make sure what is the direction so we can accordingly build our roadmaps.
And question for the TOC, do we want to have a prioritized list? So right now those are numbered. Do we actually want them to be numbered? As in, like, when prioritizing, this is how to do prioritization. I don't know, what do people think?
I don't necessarily think it's an ordered list, or if it is, we should reconsider the order, perhaps.
Yeah. Also, different folks tend to operate on different things. I'm not sure a strict prioritization helps with planning for the working group execution. I think the fact that there's just a small number of things is probably more useful.
Yeah, that was gonna be my concern if we start adding too many things, but maybe we're okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a kind of a section in the doc which is important but less important stuff, where we list out some other things. But
yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
So, would it also help if we say, for example, for each of those 4 high-level goals, what would be the exit strategy? So when we say cleaning up and stabilizing APIs and features, what would be the exit strategy? When do I know it's complete? Because it's like continuous process, but then when can I say, yes, it is done for 2022? What is my exit strategy?
Yeah,
Yeah, do we want to be that fine-grained? It seems like a lot of this is like high-level directional guidance, not necessarily that in 2020 we will complete Istio extensibility. It will have completed its reach. Like, this is just, from my point of view at least, like what we want our quarterly roadmaps to focus on, which will have more exact criteria.
Yeah, I think it's
I think that's right. I think you can have some notion of like what we want to accomplish for each of these in 2022. So that's kind of the common input to consider. But yeah, I agree, John. We're not gonna, like, most of these are going to continue past 2022.
yeah, so Shweta, are you asking about like some concrete measurable outcomes?
Yes, please. I mean, some high level. The reason is I assume not having a PM, TOCs will help there. That will also help us accomplish what percentage we reach at the end of the year. Not having is not open goals are always problematic.
Yeah, I think
So, I mean,
the problem is that the roadmaps are owned by the working group, not right. Like TOC is helping, but we're not setting for each working group what it should accomplish. Right, we're just trying to give them themes.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be up to the working groups to say, okay, here's what we want to accomplish in terms of API stability. Right.
Yeah, I think it's hard to get to what you can accomplish without understanding the resources, who's willing to contribute to what.
I mean, you could kind of define almost, market acceptance like outcomes, right? like maintain Istio's leadership position as the most popular and most used open source service mesh, and then try and figure out some way to measure that. It's obviously very hard to do measurement with open source. There are things that we've talked about before, like make the customers perform fewer upgrades, right? Like we did skip level upgrades, we did 6-week extension to release support windows, so we could save users one upgrade, right, every 6 months or so. That's a pretty measurable outcome. We could obviously keep tracking towards that, but I don't know if that's the kind of thing this document should say. I think Sven's right? This is guidance to the working groups about what the focus areas should be. Separately, we could try and define some concretely measurable things, but anything that's adoption related is going to be hard. Unless people have thoughts about how we might measure adoption. But so far, we're 5 years into this and haven't really done anything on that front the whole time.
I guess we've been relying on CNCF to collect the data for us, right? In the past, last year we were the most popular open source service mesh project. This year I haven't seen CNCF reports from KubeCon. Certainly, I hope we will continue to be. I think that is the #1 goal as the project, right? We want to continue our leadership position in all the service mesh projects out there.
I know we've looked at our own adoption in terms of container downloads, which certainly is a proxy metric, but it is one that we should have access to.
Yeah, it's very not a lot of refinement in it, right? It's just a raw number.
Yes.
I guess that would be good to see the trend too, right? Hopefully, it would continue grow as far as downloading.
Yeah, there's all kinds of caveats associated with it, like users running their own internal repositories where they download it once in order to clone it to their repository and then use it 500,000 times in their internal cluster. That shows up as one download. However, I don't think there's a strong reason for those occurrences to have shifted substantially over the last, say, 2 years. So we at least have apples to apples measurement over time.
Okay, that's good. And I also noticed that if a vendor ship their own Istio, right, it could be over Istio, but maybe they added like FIPS compliance, then that's not counting as the community upstream download, right? It wouldn't show up in your number.
Correct.
Do we have any other stuff that we would care about or like to try and see if we could find some proxy measurement for?
So looks like we should add that as a prominent work item here, right? Like next time we should have more information than we have today. So whatever else we need, wherever else we need to put probes, whatever other participants in the community need to add instrumentation to their stuff. But yeah, we need to be able to answer the question better and sort of independent of the survey.
I mean, the ideal metric would be the number of times Istio Cutlet install was run, right?
So we have an angle on collecting that information. However, it would be an explicit opt-in on the part of the user. The information would be aggregated locally in some sort of config file in the home directory. and then they could optionally send the data to the Istio project for collection and aggregation. So that still relies on a lot of user behavior. I don't think any opt-out system is likely to pass privacy review.
John, do we get stats from the Artifactory or from the bucket where Istio, where the Helm charts are stored?
We could probably get the Helm charts, but it doesn't necessarily. I mean, you can do a lot of commands that will fetch the Helm charts without installing them, and I suspect that Helm probably caches them too, so you could install it a bunch of times and only ever pull it once. So, and also 0 users are using it today, so it would take some time to ramp up. But I like, sort of, I guess, is the answer.
No, but I assume in time that will be the main method of installation for people in reality. I cannot imagine using anything else at this point.
Well, we have a lot of metrics, I guess. Like we can get GitHub download stats, we can get Docker Hub and probably GCR, although I haven't looked at that. We could also get the Helm ones. And together, I think they'll give us a reasonable picture. We can also obviously, at least for GK, see kind of what's deployed in people's clusters. But I don't know if that helps us compare to other products necessarily because we don't have all of their metrics, which may make things a bit more challenging. That's a lot harder because there's no like solid way to know that I know of.
So the other things that we can look at, right? We can look at the derivative effects, like, the number of people signing on to the Slack workspace, the number of issues or support tickets raised, right? Again, not really comparative with other vendors, right? That the only mechanism there seems to be survey, right? Market survey, and CNCF is doing that today. So that's not something we need to necessarily try and do ourselves. Although we don't know how, and we don't have any influence over the survey, which is a different problem.
Well, at least they were nice enough and shared the raw data with us, right? So even though the report was misleading, we were able to generate the real data from the spreadsheets. So that was nice. I mean, I totally agree with what you guys said. We don't know how other people are doing because we don't have their data. What we can do is just compare with our data from this year with our last year's data, right? Hopefully they are similar trend, which would definitely help us maintain the leader position.
I mean, the other way to maintain the leader position is just to assert it and do a bunch of PR, right? Active blog posts, speaking at conferences, hosting events, right? Just keeping up the pace of market presence things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's more for steering. So.
Yeah, which we are doing a lot of that from a solo perspective. But the challenging is, I guess, KubeCon has always been a challenging just because, they don't accept much of the Istio talk. And it has been the most important conference for cloud native.
Yeah, this will certainly get discussed in steering.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not clear that we can add anything to the doc, the roadmap doc, around this, particularly when it's just so amorphous. Is there anything else? Are there any emerging technological trends we should be trying to capture?
I don't know if this rises to the level of annual roadmap, but I hear a lot of users asking for reference architectures, particularly for integrations with other tools. We've been very diligent in not doing everything as Istio. We are not an API gateway. There's plenty of security tooling that really ought to be integrated with Istio, but we don't publish a lot of information of how to do that, how to get Istio to play nice for instance, with another API gateway or security tools, telemetry tools, etc. So I've heard a lot of requests for those sort of reference architecture. I don't know. Again, I don't know if that rises to the level of annual roadmap.
It might. You know, we have a number of features that certainly overlap with the API management space, particularly for authentication. Certainly our routing capabilities overlap a lot with API management. You know, we don't do lots of other things that API management solutions tend to do, but you know, there's a lot of people out there who don't need them or all of those features, but they have historically viewed API management as the solution to those problems.
Well, and I mean, API management is just an example area that I'm most familiar with. The bottom line is Istio should live in an ecosystem of a number of other software tools that users are using to operate their services, and publishing good information about how to integrate those well could be useful.
Which that's what I meant by interoperability. Thank you for translating too.
Yeah, we're going to need to be a little bit more refined than just that, right? Like we do interrupt in the sense that we speak the same protocols that everybody else speaks. We need some targets.
Spiffy secure
Well,
naming.
except the MTLS stuff, but that's right. We're trying to
Just a small detail.
a small detail, but you know, most solutions out there, other than service meshes, don't do MTLS. You know, except for the CDNs, and even some of the CDNs don't do it. So is it, you know, we want to explicitly interop with API management solutions. We want to interop with, you know, enterprises, you know, existing telemetry and telemetry aggregation and their pipelines basically for that. Is that where we have gaps? Is it, you know, kind of next generation firewall and WAF products? Like, where would we be better off spending our time?
I think telemetry is an example of where we've done a reasonably good job here. We have guides for how to integrate Istio with Jaeger and Prometheus in such a way that it is production ready. We sort of did that as a result of removing those from our default install because we realized that our installs of Jaeger and Prometheus were not production hardened. So we've got some guidance there. I would think of expanding that in the telemetry space and looking for other opportunities. I don't know that I could tell you the specific tools that would be the highest priority on that list today.
And certainly in enterprise, if you look at the commercial products, right, Datadog is probably the #1 solution. And then there's a pretty long tail of stuff after that, right? New Relic, AppDynamics. I don't remember all the vendors. Nander, do you remember? But Datadog was #1, right?
Yeah. So I think that especially for a lot of telemetry vendors, integrating through or a downstream integration of Prometheus is one of their main ways of integrating or had been. Now with open telemetry coming online, things may change a little, but yeah, that's why getting integration with Prometheus, which is what we have, gets us pretty far, because all these vendors have their own scrapers for Prometheus, and then they connect to their own pipelines. So on the related question, right, the MTLS and kind of and the thing that we are trying to fix. What's the? I mean, I think the way people do it today is they'll just either use ingress or egress proxy, and then there is no MTLS through and through, but you go through ingress and egress. What's the customer pressure we're seeing just in the community to say, hey, we don't want to do that, we want more? or rather, we just actually want true MTLS all the way in? Like, do we have data on that?
So
I don't think we're seeing that actually. Costin, are you
Well,
saying something other than that?
there are some customers who want to do MTLS through, I mean, end to end. And there are customers that want to use multiple meshes. I mean, Istio and something else.
It's not a very large. I haven't heard that a lot.
No, I heard it, one or two customers, but in terms of interop and kind of not being isolated islands that only works with Istio. I mean, yes, you can use gateway, but that means you can communicate with the internet. But if you are in a mesh, meaning internally, and you use two products, you kind of expect them to work together and not go to a gateway and to the internal.
So
Yeah, I
one
mean,
thing that
I
we-
was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, Louis, go ahead, please.
I mean, so one thing that we have been doing, which is kind of solutionsy, it has been to improve the automation around gateways, right? Whether it's the provisioning side, right? Certainly for Google, we've been looking at automating, making sure it's easy to set up with Google's Edge load balancer, right? That's been an important thing for customers for Anthos service mesh. So those are certainly important solutions. I could certainly see that as a thing that we would want to invest in, whether it's, on Google or on Azure or Amazon or, other clouds where you're using, an edge load balancer that isn't our gateway, but you want to stack our gateway behind it for lots and lots of different reasons, then, having solutions that help people make that work is probably going to be valuable, even if it's just, some concrete docs. I think that would probably be helpful. And that may actually be one of the, maybe the most important integration guide we have other than telemetry.
Yeah, I can confirm that would be very valuable because a lot of users are not on Google Cloud.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, or they're
Yeah.
on premise, right? I mean, it's,
Yep.
it's not just the cloud vendors, right? I mean, how do I stack this up behind, my ingress that's using Nginx or F5 or, I don't know, Zscaler, right? Those are all pretty common.
There are also areas like CI/CD where it's not something we would traditionally think of Istio directly interoperating with. However, if you want to use GitOps on top of your Istio config, there are some steps you need to take that are a little bit different from using GitOps on top of, say, a deployment and service. Even reference implementations there. This is probably like a no-code sort of thing. Just documenting how we did it would be valuable to users.
In environments we discussed, supporting Istio in Docker environments with, kind of CI/CD is a perfect example for that, where you can run test and use Istio with all the features inside the CI/CD for testing and so forth. And it is something we are working on.
Yeah, I guess this
Okay.
is also where a lot of user doesn't like Istio cuddle because it's not perceived to be very friendly with their existing GitHub pipeline, and it's additional approval for them to use it.
Well, have we seen much traction with the simpler Helm setup? Because if we haven't, right, we're not getting market signal.
Yeah, I guess our Helm is not beta yet, right? The Helm is still alpha at the moment.
So maybe that's one of the things we want to call out, progressing.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let me try to add that.
Something, Sven, I wasn't sure if it's in the doc or not, but there's the kind of security properties of Istio, right? Whether it can be trusted as a, for bypassability or not.
That is not listed in the document.
It's not listed in the I don't know if that's really been a concern. I've heard a lot from, or heard a lot in open source. But it is a technical concern, right? I mean, I think we as a community are concerned with it.
I surveyed some users on April in that and heard pretty much unanimously from, I think, 8 different companies that was not a concern for them. However, there is a degree of selection bias here. If it was a deep concern for the company, I'm not sure that they would be Istio users.
Right.
Will that be like protected by extra policies, for example, Kubernetes networking policy, plus the policies Istio offers? I think a lot of companies are using that combination, right?
We certainly don't make it easy to leverage Kubernetes network policy to achieve non-bypassability right now.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is, should we mention it in our user guide as well? Like, if you're worried about bypassing the sidecars, you should apply some networking policies as well.
I think it's a little hard right now, right? Because we are trying to fix the network transport, which will change the properties and the recommendations that we would make.
Right.
So it might be premature. Well, we're clearly hoping to get that done in 2022. So it's at that point we should be able to make stronger recommendations for the other things. So yeah, it's probably fine to put it in the roadmap. Right, that we have a cleaner and clearer security posture. I think maybe that's the point, right? That because there's fuzziness about the reliability, what we want to do is clarify the security posture.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can at least tell customers like what are the potential things that they can fix if they are like about those bypassabilities. Could give them some suggestions, but not necessarily like give them a complete solution there. Just to suggest them in their best practice, security best practice.
Well, there should be something approaching a solution, right? Or at least, there's a set of practices you can follow. Then if you follow them, you only have these would be considered the weaknesses.
Yeah.
Another area I think we could try and capture in the roadmap is to have fewer CVEs. right, where we are more proactive about boundary testing or fuzz testing of critical capabilities.
I think we might already have it.
Do we have it?
We already have some fuzzy test covering.
No, not the tests. I meant
some of them.
the roadmap goal.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you meant, Lynn?
I know we had it as, okay, what we deliver in 2021, we said we increase the effectiveness of our CVE patch process. But nothing
Yeah,
for
I-
2022.
So we made it better when we do have a CVE, but I think Louis is saying that we should have less CVEs, which is somewhat different.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
We've gotten better about delivering solutions to CVEs. Like, you know, we're pretty good for an open source project on that front at this point. But each CVE that we have, right, the majority of them have required data plane updates for customers, which have caused them to need to do rollouts, which are disruptive. And so they would probably appreciate doing fewer of them if they were CVE conscious. Although it's also clear that not every customer is CVE conscious.
I think using distroless images can be a very important thing in
Yes,
in the next
like
year.
that would be a good example of something that would reduce the CVE surface area and reduce the number of CVEs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you scroll down to the end, Louis, there's a security hardening. We can just make a effort to mention less CVE as a goal, but there was a good enough amount talk about distroless and CNI. I do want to ask one thing. I remember, Louis, you were presenting a document, I think in one of the networking working group to had a proposal of if user doesn't need, if all user needs is mutual TLS from Istio, they could potentially not needing to run a sidecar. Is that something interesting to put on? I don't know if that's still planned and if that's something interesting on the roadmap to, you know, help our performance for users just need mutual TLS.
So I think it's obviously it's a solution, right? It's not necessarily a theme. But yeah, maybe we could. Well, we don't know yet if it's feasible technically.
I see.
So certainly, you know, it's aligned with having fewer CVEs, fewer updates, better performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think as long as we have those as themes, then, you know, that work fits within it. That work is still exploratory. So.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the reason
if we have a concrete answer on it and we have a very good idea that it's going to work, then I think it would.
Yeah, the reason yeah, totally makes sense. The reason I thought about it is because I think last week Liz Rice wrote an article on Newsstack. I don't know if you guys saw it, and she kind of claimed eBPF is the new service mesh data plane, right? So she's saying this is so high performance. This could replace the sidecar proxy model and all that.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that certainly a bunch of people at Google are pretty skeptical of those claims.
Right.
I think we're going to talk about a PR response to that in steering.
Okay, good. Yeah, we are concerned too.
Yeah, Solo gave a talk about accelerating service mesh with eBPF at KubeCon. I was pinging Niraj to find out what was in the talk, but
Oh,
'Cause
I'll send you the recording. The recording is out. And what we mentioned in the talk was different than the conclusion she was leading to, which is really odd. My feeling is she didn't watch our talk at all when she actually made a reference to our talk in her conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, William Morgan had an interesting, Twitter thread response to the New Stack article, and well, I like to disagree with what William said. He was, his points about mutual TLS were pretty much on point. So, that's something to be considered. But anyway, I think we'll talk about it in steering. Certainly, the product managers here at Google were thinking about, positioning and things of that nature. But we don't have a product manager for Istio per se, right? That's the function of steering to some degree, or at least the biz dev side. Anyway, it'll definitely come up on Friday, if not before. So
Okay, that
on
sounds
the
good.
technical front, if you look at Cilium's solution, right, if they want to perform any L7 network behavior as a policy, they kick out to Envoy. They have no structural advantage for L7. And they don't do mutual TLS. They do WireGuard and they do IPsec. And there's, I think, some confusion in the market about the difference between a VPN and mutual TLS. And it's obviously in Cilium's benefit to kind of maximize that confusion, I guess, right? To promote their product or their solution.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that we should be thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. But like you said, I think your other proposal was covered in different aspects in this roadmap already. So we're good.
All right, well, we're out of time anyway. Yeah, so folks, go through the roadmap doc, leave comments. The TUC members will try and resolve, but yeah, all ideas are welcome. And we'll, I guess, get this sorted out. But coming back to Shweta's point, I don't know that this is blocking for 113. Directionally, like overall, if you look at the 2022 proposed roadmap and the 2021 roadmap, they look very similar. Right? Our kind of overall roadmap hasn't changed. And that's, I guess, a sign of the fact that the project is maturing. And we don't need as much feature or API velocity as we once did, because we have a lot and our focus is on stabilizing it. And improving our, then we look at the second order things like improving our integration points. And that's really no different in 2022 than it was in 2021. And I would have been surprised if it was. But if you as a working group lead feel like you're going to be stuck, if you don't have more resolution in this document, then please make that comment.
Cool.
Okay, everyone. Well, I think we're out of time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a great week.
everyone.